So welcome to our very first in-person real estate investing event. I've sold courses on real estate. I've done Zoom classes on real estate. But this is something that we wanted to put on just for anybody and everybody to come learn more about real estate. So I hope you find passion like I do for real estate. It is quite frankly the best thing in the world, the best investment out there as well. But my BRT right there. Hello, come on in. Yeah, come on down. We're just getting rolling. Thank you, Drake. Appreciate it, guys. Guys, this is Tony Schultz. He's the owner of Forte. Just opened up across the street.
Well,
Make sure you come check him out. Grand opening was today. We have some tea and lemonade back there. Don't make me drink it all because I will. Okay, help me out a little bit. But like I said, I hope you find a passion for real estate like I did. We put on a lot of classes like this, and sometimes it's more so geared towards how do I get started in real estate as a licensee, right? Getting my real estate license. What's up, man? We got a sign-in sheet up in the back there. Feel free to grab a notebook and a pen as well. Yeah. So here's the thing. This is quite frankly, the safest thing I do. Okay, I want you to understand that. This building, it's a piece of real estate. That's the best part about it, right? It's a safe investment. But this business that I operate here, Ritter Real Estate itself, quite frankly, that is not the safest thing that I do. Why do I say that? Well, quite frankly, all my agents can up and leave me tomorrow. All my agents can leave tomorrow, and I have zero agents here, zero part of my business outside of myself, right? To me, that's pretty scary. It's a realization that could happen, right? No one could go to Forte and buy tea tomorrow, right? No one. We're not wishing that. No one could go to Spectrum and buy records next door, buy a cocktail next door. That's pretty scary. That's risky, right? That's business. The fact that if Ritter Real Estate fell down tomorrow, I could lease this out to somebody else. That's pretty safe. Does that make sense? So people we're talking about some numbers tonight. But people, they see me buy a $2 million apartment complex and they're like, oh my gosh, how would you do that? How is that possible? Guys, like that trigger to me is so easy to pull. Okay. To me, that is the easiest, the safest part of my business. So hopefully I proved that to you tonight. So any people like numbers out there, statistics, stuff like that, you weirdos? I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I'm not a huge spreadsheet guy. I'd rather deal with people all day. I'd rather sit up here and talk all day. Might have to cut me off a little bit later, but I have some numbers for you that for people that like it, right? So there are 19.95 million rental properties in the U.S. It's a lot. And of those containing 48.2 million rental units, according to census data. About 70% of rental properties are owned by individual investors, which proves the fact that anybody can do this. 70% of them are owned by individual investors. Okay. Around 34% of households live in rental housing across the United States. 42% of those live in single family homes, while 36% of those live in apartments with 5 or more units, which is what we're talking about tonight, commercial real estate. And almost half, 47% of renters are under 30 years of age, and this will only increase over time. Prices have grown 326% since 1950. This thing called appreciation we're going to talk about in a second. And what about right here in Cape County? What about Cape Girardeau? Crazy to find out, okay? 45% of Cape Girardeau, of this town right here, is occupied by rentals, people that rent property. Isn't that pretty crazy? Only half, essentially, of the people that live in this town own their property. Pretty bizarre. And this will only increase, okay? So, hopefully, those statistics alone get you excited about real estate. If you don't know who I am, my name is Jared Ritter, the Bright Wizard Broker. I own 130 rental units, all in this general area. And most of those multifamily real estate. Okay. I solely own those properties, which there's lots of different ways to go about it. You'll find out tonight. You can buy them with a partner. You can buy them with lots of investors bring in money. These I've just simply done myself. So I have 130 residential units. The most recent was a 7-unit apartment building that I bought called Sunny Hill on West End. If you guys have seen that one. Okay. But the first thing I want to discuss as we move forward tonight, very quickly, is the idea of the difference between an asset and a liability. Okay. An asset, I want you to keep it this simple. I'm going to recommend a book tonight. Some of you have probably read it. You'll hear about it at the end. And it keeps it this simple, and that's what I want you to do. Okay. The difference between an asset and a liability. An asset puts money into your pocket, a liability takes it away. Okay. I don't care if you're a third grader, you can understand that, right? Pretty simple. An asset puts money into your pocket, a liability takes it away. Okay. Don't make it any more difficult than that. All right. So, a car. It's probably an easy answer, right? When you buy that new car, you drive it off the lot, everyone knows it immediately decreases in value outside of COVID, right? But that makes sense, right? Why does that make sense? It's a liability. It takes money out of your pocket, does it not? You got to put gas in that car every day, every week, every month. You got to pay insurance on that vehicle, right? You got to pay repairs, oil changes on that vehicle. Does that put money in your pocket or take money out? It takes money out. It's a liability. What about the house you live in? Everybody likes to talk about how the house you live in is an asset. Sorry, it's not. You live there. Is it maybe have some future value due to appreciation and resale? Yes, I get it. It's not an asset though. Don't look at it like an asset. Why? You got to pay homeowners insurance, right? You got to pay utilities. You got to pay taxes. You pay every month on that property, yes? But guys, that's not an asset. By the very simple definition, it's a liability. Okay? So, very simply stated, that is the difference between an asset and a liability. So, that is your little intro. Again, I'm going to give you just a minute if you would like to. Please don't make this like an awkward silence moment, okay? This is supposed to be a fun, interactive evening. We have tea and coffee in the back. You just arrived, so please feel free to stand up and grab some of that. Also, if you haven't had a chance to get a notebook and a pen, please do that as well. And we're going to move forward with my most favorite thing in the world to talk about up front. Nobody's going to get some tea? Come on, guys. Come on. Everybody signing on my sign-in sheet back there? Please get some tea and coffee, or tea and lemonade, whatever. Coffee's in the back. Give you guys a couple minutes. Thank you. Come on. Yeah, start the trend. Start the trend. Let's go. Sweet. Yes. When did you buy your first deal? My first deal? Oh, that's a great question. So I bought my first deal. I was 22, and it was FHA, 3.5% down. So one of the only deals I've ever backed out on was my very first offer I ever made. And that's when I met my home inspector and shook his hand, said, "Hey, how's it going?" Type thing. And then the first question he ever asked me in my life was, "Do you want to own this property forever?" And at the time I was like, "Yes, I will never sell it." This is my philosophy we'll talk about tonight. But funny enough, he was like, "Well, in that case, I have to tell you that this is a money pit." And I was super bummed because it was a 4-unit complex in Jackson. And FHA, everybody heard of that before? 3.5% down, you can buy up to 4 units, 2 to 4 units. Okay. And you can do that 3.5% down. You have to live in one of the units and you can rent out the others. But I'm alluding to something called house hacking, which comes up a little bit later. But that's how I got started. I bought my first property, 3.5% down. The 4-unit fell apart. And so I was really eager and hungry to buy something. So I started looking at residential homes. and bought a nice residential home with my FHA loan. Changed my mind about living in it. Probably shouldn't have, but it is what it is. It's been longer than 10 years. And I'm allowed to tell you that now. And I ended up renting it out. Okay. So shouldn't have done that, right? You're supposed to live in it. However, I changed my mind. A friend needed a place to live. I rented it out. You're paying your payment. They're probably not going to come knocking on your door. Okay. So that was my very first deal. And I'll make sure if you guys want Q&A at the end, I would love that. I'll stay as long as needed. Okay. I can talk real estate all day. So the very first thing we're talking about is something super special to me. Who's heard me talk about the financial seniority ranking before? Some of you? Got a few in the room, okay? If you have or you haven't, doesn't really matter. This is the most important thing that we will talk about tonight. It is not, I'll hopefully leave this up here just to refer back to. It is not any kind of trick. It's pretty much what the title says. It is your finances in order, how you should think about them, okay? Whenever I heard this, it aligned so much with what I believed in. It made so much sense that I was like, I will never, ever not talk about this, okay? I've done this at my conference I do once a year. If I have one topic to talk about, whether it's 10 minutes or an hour and a half, I've talked about this for an hour and a half before, the financial seniority ranking, okay? So we don't have this much time to go over it, okay? I'm writing it on the board. I know it's right behind me just to hopefully refer back to. But number one is your income, okay? And we'll put a real estate spin on this in a second. But if I do nothing else but encourage you to get your money right tonight, I've done my job. Okay. Too much of time is spent everywhere else. That's just the honesty. Okay. Too much, and this most definitely positively is in order. Okay. Number two being tax strategy. Everybody likes to meet with their accountant and talk about tax strategies when they don't have any money. I've never understood that. Okay. Oh. Talking, writing. I'll go and put them out there. Number three is your spending discipline. What does everybody like to do? Talk about how to save money when they ain't got any. And of course, number four, whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's real estate, whether it's stocks, everybody likes to get on Facebook and talk about investments, right? But guys, what does investing matter if you just have, $500 to invest? My number one encouragement to you is figure out an avenue, a pathway where you can make money. Okay. Find something that you can dominate in, where you can work on your craft, where you can become the absolute best at what you do, where you have kind of a money problem. You're like, shoot, I'm actually making a decent income for myself. I need to figure out where to put this. What do I do with it? When you start to ask those questions, like the first time I had to pay a major check, major check, almost six-figure check to Uncle Sam, I was like, oh crap, I got to figure something else out, right? I'm making so much money as a self-employed person and writing a fat check to the government. If you have those kind of problems, I will be the first cheerleader in your corner. That is a great problem to have, right? Why? Because if you can do that, you've conquered number one. 90 to 95% of your time should be, how do I conquer number one? How do I create an income? Because the rest takes care of itself. You can solve a lot of problems through money. It's just the truth. You want to be part of this game called money, this cycle, this economy. You want to be part of that economy, where money is a tool. It should flow through you. You should use money to your advantage to accomplish things, right? I could keep talking about this all day. So number two, tax strategies. Yes, once you've legally learned how to make money, let's legally learn how to save it. Best thing in the world. You want to keep more of your money in your pocket. Make sense? But it doesn't matter about keeping money in your pocket if you ain't got any. This is not meant as an insult. This is just reality, right? Like I said, I had an eye-opening moment when I had to write a $70,000 check to Uncle Sam one year. I was like, oh, shoot, we got to do something about this. I never want to do that again. That was stupid, right? That's how it should feel at that point, okay? But then there are certain tax strategies you can do to properly save your money, okay? Now, spending discipline is what gets everybody in trouble. You get a raise, they get a new car. You get a raise, you buy the watch. Who in here would agree that it doesn't really matter how much money you make as a salary if you're just going to go out and spend all that money, right? You guys, there's people walking around suits in this town that are just as broke as a joke. Okay? Just because someone has a nice vehicle, has a nice home, has a nice whatever, does not mean they're well off. Because if you make 500,000 and you spend 500,000, you are no better off than a homeless person walking the street. Quite frankly, it might be worse in a lot of ways. Okay? So I firmly believe that. And it's just like in a real estate deal. You know, when people ask me like, "Hey, I'm thinking about selling this deal. Should I not?" It's like the only question I really have in my mind, first and foremost, is what are you going to do with that money? If you're like, "Well, I'm kind of tired of that property. I'm gonna sell it. I'm gonna buy a boat." Okay, well, if that's your prerogative, that's all you. Awesome. Like each their own. But that's how the middle class gets stuck. The middle class gets stuck because you make enough money to afford your middle class luxuries, and then you take time off and you go, this is great, until crap hits the fan, because that's called life. And then you're like, crap, I need to work hard again. Sound like the rat race? Anybody else? Instead of let me work my absolute tail off, properly save my money through tax strategies. Who wrote tax strategies? The wealthy. I kind of want to do what they're doing, right? Let me properly save my money so that way, whenever I get a raise, I make more income. I figure out how to keep my spending discipline the same. Okay. This isn't Dave Ramsey. I don't want you to eat macaroni the rest of your life. But for now, this is a way to save money. I don't like the save word. I like to store money. Store money for a specific purpose. Okay. In order to get to number 4, but don't start there. Start here. Okay. So I hope you learn a lot tonight. I hope you take away a lot of good stuff. But like, figure out how to make more money. Like, we could end the class right now and say, come back later. Let's all make more money. Yes? Awesome thing. You guys need to talk about money around the dinner table. You need to talk about money to your kids. Like, this has to be part of your language. It's not taboo. Okay, it's a good thing to make money. I want all the good people. You guys would not be here tonight if you weren't good people. You care about learning, educating yourself, growing. Like, that's awesome. You're taking your Wednesday night up for this. Okay, so I want you to make a lot of money until you can pour into an investment. So the whole class tonight is based off the idea. My whole strategy, my last 11 years, my last 10 years of investing, has been based off the idea is you take your hard-earned money and you pour into a passive vehicle. Okay, that's literally all I've done, guys. I've taken. You guys work hard for your money, yes? You do. It matters what you do with it, how you save it, how you spend it, and then what you do with it. Okay, so the hard-earned money pours into the investment. The passive, this creates a passive dollar, creates the life you've always wanted. Fun. Going back to the middle class comment I just made, I'm gonna have to speed this up. But going back to the middle class comment I just made, well, what does society do? They spend on things that don't bring them a return. And that's fine if that's what you want to do, but that's not what I want to do. I want to be able to choose what I do. And you don't get freedom without passive. You don't get passive without working your tail off. Hard-earned income pays for a passive vehicle, real estate, that can pay you every month, no matter what you're doing. I have 130 tenants that I don't really care if they know my name. Doesn't matter what I'm doing on the weekends. They're living in my properties. They're paying me every month. Right? Makes sense? You get enough of that. Your number one goal, please go home and write your goals. Create some goals, right? But your number one objective should be to replace your salary one day. Then you actually have freedom. That's legit freedom. Everything else is made up, fabricated freedom. Okay? But if you can create enough of this passive stuff through investments, especially real estate, that you get a check, cash flow, this beautiful thing called cash flow that pays you every single month. That's what creates the fun. Then you have freedom because you can choose what to do. Make sense? Okay, so let's talk about this in the eyes of real estate real quick. So, income, number one. What does that mean when it regards real estate? Well, it's this beautiful thing you're going to hear a lot tonight called cash flow. There's also appreciation. Real estate gets better over time. You heard earlier, what was that crazy stat? Since 1950, 326% growth in real estate. You think it's going to get worse or better over time? Real estate's always going to appreciate. It's always going to get better. Okay. So that potentially is future income. Thing called value add, making properties better, bringing in more money. You're instantly making your properties better. That's income. Tax strategies, this beautiful thing called the 1031 exchange we're going to touch on later. Depreciation. What other asset This is rhetorical because there's no answer. What other asset can you name that gets better over time? You can depreciate it on your taxes, aka write it off, and it pays you every single month. Real estate. Okay. So tax strategies. Number two, as far as real estate specifically, it's you can write it off, right? You can depreciate that property. Why? Well, the government, I wonder how many of them own real estate. Okay. The government says that we understand that your property is going to get worse over time, theoretically. It's going to break down over time. You're going to have to replace stuff over time. So you can depreciate the value of that real estate over 27 and a half years for multifamily. Little pieces every single year. Okay. If it's a commercial property like this, you can appreciate over 39 years. Pretty awesome. I can do that every single year. And then there's this thing, take this home, study if you want to, called cost segregation. Okay. It's usually a study that your accountant will have to send off to do. But cost segregation is taking a lot of that appreciation and turning it into personal property, like your big stuff like HVAC and stuff like that. It brings it all up front, and you can write off the majority of the amount over the first 3 to 5 years, which is crazy when you think about it. You're forcing that 27 and a half years up front for a lot of that depreciation and writing off a huge amount the first year you bought it. Well, maybe it just makes sense for whatever your situation is, right? Cost segregation. It's amazing. And if you buy one property here and you do cost segregation every time, you're writing off a bulk amount every single time. Does that make sense? Okay. Spending discipline, leverage, equity. Also inflation. We're going to talk about those things in a little bit. Inflation protection. Okay. We probably, no matter where you stand in this room, we can all agree that your dollar ain't worth as much as it used to be, right? So what do you do? If my dollar is going to be worth less tomorrow, worth less the next year, and you guys already told you work hard for your money, what is the answer? Well, the answer is you need to put it in an asset that doesn't lose value because your dollar does. Your dollars are dying in the bank if you got some. So this save mentality, guys, it's awesome, but you better be saving it for a specific purpose. Okay? You're good. You're good.
Like touching.
So you have to save it for a specific purpose. So I just told you the past 10 years, all I've done is store dollars away in an asset, right? Well, those dollars are protected by that real estate. And I just told you that real estate gets better over time, right? So the 20% downs I've been putting away in real estate, putting away in real estate, putting away in real estate. Are those dollars protected? Yeah, they're growing, quite frankly. It's a hedge against inflation. So, and then investments itself. 80, now probably closer to 90% of all millionaires are made through real estate. First time I heard that, Arnold Schwarzenegger said that quote, I was like, that's freaking crazy. I was like, I better own some real estate. I don't know how else to answer that question, but I need some real estate too then. If that's how you become a millionaire, I want some. And it's just so true because of everything you've already heard and more. But earn to passive, passive to fund. How much will it take to replace your salary? And then a guy by the name of Grant Cardone, he said a quote that your goal, think about this for a second. It wraps up everything we just said. Your goal should be to make zero earned income. Why? Kind of crazy. Because eventually you do get to have a choice of you make so much passive that you don't even have to work anymore. Make sense? And then who's here ever has been taxed on your earned income? It's not very fun. Versus some of the advantages to owning real estate and write-offs, and et cetera. Okay, so let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. That helpful? Spent a lot of time on that. Hopefully it's good. What makes a good investment? Okay. What makes a good investment? Next slide, please. So, number one, Warren Buffett says the best way to make a good investment is never lose money. And the last rule of investing, never lose money, right? That should be your objective. If the best thing you can do is figure out not how to lose money, that's a pretty good start, okay? It's true what they say, location, 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 okay? I bought this building several years ago. It's on one of the best corners in downtown. I'm not really worried about this building. There could be some catastrophic things happen right here. I'm still not very worried. Like I told you guys at the beginning of this is the absolute safest thing that I do. I feel so secure with this building, right? This business, all my agents leave me tomorrow, I'm freaking in trouble. Make sense? Number of units. That is the number one. If you had to choose one thing on this list, it's that. Okay. And I'm not saying that, we can all do this tomorrow, but that should be what you want to get to. Number of units, absolutely, positively, is the most important number in real estate. Why? A couple of reasons. I'll try to go pretty quick. Residentially, when you compare properties, house to a house, okay, a duplex to a duplex, a quad to a quad, up to 4 units. When you're doing that, you're comparing against other duplexes, other houses. I'm relying on them to potentially make money, to become better. Comps, right? Real estate gets better over time. That's fine and all. But in commercial real estate, 5+ units, I am more so compared to the idea of how much money that property can make. So that's where the number of units comes in. If I have 2 units, well, somebody moves out, now I'm 50% occupied, 50% vacant. That kind of sucks. You have one house, somebody moves out, you're 100% vacant. That really sucks. My 70-unit apartment building I just bought, once it's full, one person moves out, 10 people move out, I don't really blink. Protection. Also, 70 units times I raise the rent $25. I raise the rent $50. I instantly increase my value of my property because your appraisal, your actual value of that real estate is based solely on the NOI, net operating income, which we'll get to in a second as well. But does that make sense? How the number of units matter so much? It's much easier. I want to use the word manipulate, but you can theoretically manipulate the value if the rents are there to increase them to, right? Cash flow, of course, is king. We talked about that. A value add, to me, I love value add. Now, if I buy the best location in town and I paid up for it, so this is the best location and it's already remodeled, okay, I'm not going to yell at you. Okay, the Bachelor Suites up here with the big mural where we do the Christmas tree lighting. I own that building. When I bought that, it was pretty nice and remodeled. Not going to lie to you. They had done a good job already. Okay, but that thing has, well, number one thing I do buying that property is I can increase the rents. Like these rents are low. I'm paying X for the property, yeah, but the rents are low. And by me increasing the rents, I instantly increase the value of my property. Like we were just saying, right? Makes sense? So there's nothing wrong with buying a location, okay? And there's nothing wrong with making a location better. But your value add, that's how you force appreciation. That's how you force appreciation. By me making that property better, theoretically overnight I could raise the rents, and then I don't even have to wait on time to make my property worth more. I force appreciation. Okay. Also with getting started, building your boardroom. Okay, this is the strategy of, I won't spend too much time on this because it might be obvious, but these are the people, the things you want in your corner. You got to have these relationships, okay? Like I said, for the sake of time, I'll move pretty quick. But you need a real estate agent, unless you are a real estate agent. You need somebody in your corner that's going to look up deals, who knows what they're talking about, who can show you deals, who can negotiate on your behalf. No ifs, no buts. You need lenders, and quite frankly, you might need a couple. I work really well with 2 to 3 lenders in town. Sometimes one can do a deal that the other can't, and that's okay. Some of them want you to spread some things out if you're buying a lot. Okay. Whenever I bought the Bachelor Suites up there, I told you about, this was in 2020, December 2020. It was a great time for real estate. It was very popular. There was a lot of good stuff going on. And I had several different banks wanting that deal. Much different than trying to buy a deal right now. Okay. So whenever I bought that deal, I had several banks trying to offer me competitive rates. And then I had First Midwest, Kevin Greaser, he called me and said, hey, has anybody offered you a 10-year fix? And I was like, for commercial? No one's offered me that. Usually you're looking at a 3 to 5 year ARM, which is an adjustable rate mortgage, as in that property is going to swing, ebb and flow after 3 years with the current prime interest rate, or you may have to pay prime plus a half, plus whatever. Okay. Not to get into a too much of a rabbit hole here, but this is how a lot of people recently got hurt with real estate. 2020, COVID, dropped these rates crazy. You could get a commercial real estate. My rate, I'll just use myself as an example. I'm so lucky. I was like, dude, you're giving me a 10-year fixed rate at 4.49% commercial. That's what I have the bachelor locked in at till 2030. Okay. Imagine this is what a lot of people are going through right now, where that rate was up in 3 years. You have so much real estate coming due right now. It's astronomical. Okay. When they usually tell you if a deal is good and they do their underwriting, a bank does their underwriting, they do what's called shocking a rate. They'll adjust it up another 2% just to see if the deal still works, if it's okay. Well, if they would have done that for my bachelor lien, I would have taken it from 4.5, let's call it, to 6.5. And they said, okay, the deal still works, it's fine. Well, what happened in COVID? Rates went from 4 to 9%. And all of a sudden, everybody that probably shouldn't have done the deal, maybe they didn't do good numbers, maybe some things just fell apart, and you went from 5% to 9%, a lot of people got royally screwed. Okay. So rates matter. Having good banking relationships matter. Your inspectors, your contractors, that's your lifeblood of real estate right there. Having good contractors, whether it's electricians, your normal GC, general contractor, your plumbers, your roofers. You need good insurance agents. Right now, insurance is in shambles. The whole industry is in freaking shambles. Okay. Florida's probably moving to a state-run insurance. Okay. It's so bad. That is something important to have good insurance agents on your side to run some of those numbers. Having a good accountant. Not all accountants will do that cost segregation thing I talked about earlier, right? The forced upfront appreciation. Having a good property manager, also freaking gold. Okay. My mom and I own a property management company together. Guys, if I had to manage all my properties, I wouldn't have anything. I could do nothing else. Okay. It's so worth the 10% I pay of the money collected in. It's so worth it not to have to deal with it. Right? Attorneys. And then the number one seat at your boardroom, if I didn't remind you earlier, is your money. Your number one seat on your boardroom is the dollar bills. Okay. You got to have your money. Next. Here's some basics. Okay. Like I said, we have a lot to cover, so I apologize if you think I'm moving quick. Creating your LLC. Every single one of you need to do this if you don't have one. There's a lot of strategies behind this. You can dig on Google, read books, whatever. Some people say, oh, you should only buy one property per LLC. Okay, I get it. There's more protection there. I tend to get to like 4, 5, 6 properties, and then I'll start a new LLC. It's really up to you. But my larger buildings, that's the sole building I own in that LLC. You can go to the Secretary of State's website, make an LLC for $50, or when you start building your boardroom, create a relationship with an attorney, have them create it for you, have them draft your operating agreement for you, and start that relationship because you're going to need attorneys. Okay, it's just part of it. But you need to create your LLC. You can open up your bank account at your bank, get checks in your LLC's name. There's some basics, right, to get started. The bank's going to want to see 2 to 3 years. Most are asking for 3 years right now of your tax returns. And your PFS. What's a PFS? Personal finance statement. Yep. Is anybody, you have to raise your hand, but if anybody does not have a personal finance statement yet, I will email you a blank template as long as you fill that out back there, okay? It's a beautiful thing. Every single one of you need a personal finance statement. It's not you're going to answer 1,001 questions for the bank. This is to make your life so much easier, okay? It's also super fun to me because this is literally how you measure yourself in the world of your finances in your growth, okay? And you're like, well, that's great, Jared, but I'm not really happy with where I'm at right now. More reason to fill it out, okay? I would rather you go take a look at this 10 years from now and be like, oh man, guys, look where I was back in 24, and now look where I am. Like, go fill out that personal finance statement today. I don't care if there's a lot of debt on there. I don't care if you own any assets yet. I'd rather you see your net worth. That's what it gives you, right? Your assets and your liabilities to create your net worth, right? The bank wants to see all your assets. The bank wants to see all your liabilities. The cool thing is what that measures out to is your net worth. And that's what I want to see grow for you over time. Okay. So that they're going to want all those things. If you have all that, you walk into the bank. By the way, never go through the drive-through at the bank. That's stupid. Walk in every single bank, meet every single teller, shake the hands of the bank presidents. You're going to get a deal that way. They're going to tell you yes on a loan that way. If they've never seen you before, you don't have your crap in order, it can be pretty hard to get a deal. It's just reality. That's just life. Okay. You don't think that you having a personality and a smile and a good handshake gets you a deal, you're crazy. But you walk in there, you got 2 to 3 years worth of taxes. Here's my personal finance statement, Mr. Banker. And you know some of these equations we're talking about? They're like, shoot, get that thing a deal. Right? I promise. I promise. And then build up your reserves. The bank's going to want to see you have money. The bank's going to want to see you have assets. If I hit on number one enough, creating an income, right? Next. So those are some basics. Let's talk about finding deals. Here's what you can expect tonight. Finding deals, analyzing deals, funding deals, and strategies. We good for that? Sweet. So, finding deals. To hit this over the head again, you need to partner up with a real estate agent. That's a great way to find deals. We have access to the MLS. Okay, we see stuff probably before the general public does. You are involved in the business. You just simply know about more. That's just the truth. I've also purchased many of listing appointments. Okay, where people start to know that I'm an investor. People know that I own property. People know that I flip houses. All of a sudden, people are calling Jared to flip their house. That's a pretty awesome problem. Okay, the Bass String Suites up here, the one with the mural I was just talking about, that was a listing appointment. And I said, hey, just to let you know, I can have some personal interest in this. And they said, we would rather work with you than list this on the market. A lot of people like that don't want to put stuff on the market. They want you to find a buyer. What if you're the buyer? Okay. So that's exactly what I did. Shot them an offer. Didn't work out. They countered me. We were too far apart. I said, hey, I would absolutely love to still list this deal for you. List a $2 million property for you. Right. At that time, they wanted 3. Okay. Well, guess what? Things change. And they came back to me and said, hey, we actually have something else we want to buy. What were they trying to do? This thing later, we'll talk about, called a 1031 exchange. And they said, would you be willing to renegotiate your offer? Submit another offer. I said, sure. So I kind of split the difference, ran some new numbers, offered 2.25 million, and they said yes. Hold on to that for a little bit later with the 1031. Okay. Or become an agent, right? Best way to be involved potentially is become an agent yourself. Agents are pricing and negotiating experts. These are the 2 things that Zillow can't do. That's why they're the best things we do. Zillow can't walk into your house and price it. They take a big conglomerate of comps in an area. They don't know block from block, right? That's not what Zillow does. And we negotiate. So, guys, start looking. It's that simple. Okay. If you're just coming here to look for permission to get started, get started. Okay. I didn't get started how I thought I would. You guys heard me earlier. I was talking about how I was buying a 4-unit that fell apart. That sucked. And I was like, you know what? Okay, fine. I'm going to buy the residential home. I'm so glad I got started. But how do you get started? You start looking, guys. Robert Kiyosaki, I got this from him. His big thing is like run, walk your dog, visit neighborhoods that you want to live in, be in, invest in. Okay. And I've run certain neighborhoods a lot where it literally wraps my head around what would I do with this area? What would happen if I bought all the apartments in Walden Park, right? Kick a lot of people out. No, I'm just kidding. No, I know some friends that live there. But what would happen, right? Also, this thing called driving for dollars. Anybody ever heard that strategy? It's just simply driving around. You got a gas tank, you got a car, you can drive for dollars. What are you paying attention to? Here's some good signs. Maybe there's no city trash and recycling bins, especially if there's a carport. You can see that pretty easily. That means that there might be no one living there. Absentee owners. Overgrown grass and landscaping. Unshoveled snow, hopefully here in a little bit. Not hopefully, but potentially. Unkept or needing updates. Talking to the neighbors. If you're walking neighborhoods, if you're running neighborhoods, you start meeting neighbors. Guys, neighbors tell you everything. I love talking to neighbors, especially if it's a foreclosure I want to buy or something that's going to be sold on the courthouse steps. You can buy properties on the courthouse steps. They're cash deals. Okay. Guys, every time I go buy those, I'll stop and wait for a neighbor because they'll tell you exactly when that person moved out, why they moved out. If you can't get inside that property, they'll tell you what all they took. Oh yeah, I saw them took the appliances. They ripped out blah blah blah. They love this all. Okay, talk to the neighbors, and then notices on doors. You see a freaking piece of paper slapped up on a front door. There's probably a reason for that. Find owners on the county assessors. Okay, you can Google Cape Assessor right now, and you'll pull up the county assessors map. Okay, I can search your name if you own a property. I'll find it. Pretty scary, huh? I can also search an address and find out who owns it. What can you do with that information? Driving for dollars. I drive by. I find ones like, you know what? This thing looks a little run down in a great neighborhood. They haven't cut the grass in 3 weeks. What's going on? It looks obviously vacant. There's a for rent sign, and they obviously haven't rented it, right? That's a strategy. Well, what can I do? I can go search 1234 Anywhere Street, find out Joe who owns it. Oh my gosh, county assessors says that Joe has a mailing address in freaking Illinois. You don't even live here. You may want to sell that property. Okay. Well, what if it's properties like this where they want to, like a multifamily, probably owned by what? An LLC, right? Well, if it's in Missouri, you can go on the Missouri Business Search and search the LLC. Just Google Missouri Business Search or LLC search. And you're going to find an LLC. You'll be able to click into it. You'll be able to find out the registered agent. 99% of the time, it's the freaking owner. You go search Ritter Rental Properties LLC. That's me. You'll find that Jared Ritter is the freaking owner. And now you'll know you need to contact me. Okay. Every once in a while, the registered agent will be an attorney. Okay. You might have to go through the attorney. You can send postcards, letters. You can post bandit signs if that's something you want to do. I've never done it. You know what a bandit sign is. You see it in the corner, 3-bedroom, two bath. We buy houses, cash, right? Seeking 3-bedroom, two bath houses. That's getting into wholesaling. That's not what I'm talking about tonight. I'm talking about real estate investing. I'm not talking a lot about flips tonight. Not talking a lot about building houses. I've done both. Why? Big difference. That's real estate speculation. That's not real estate investing. Do I flip houses? Absolutely. Why? I don't like to leave money on the table. We flipped about 40 homes so far, and we made a lot of money doing that. The only reason I do that is to make more money. So I have a larger down payment for a better deal. Make sense? But that's speculating. I think I will build it for X and sell it for X. That's not investing. I hope this works. Flipping. I'm going to put this much money into it and be able to resell it for X. That's not investing, that's speculating. And that's a one-time shot. Real estate investing, called investing because you get paid every month through that beautiful thing we talked about called cash flow. Okay. And hey, you find out a name, message them on Facebook. Go knock on their door. Find their mailing address, whatever it happens to be. Okay. And the other owners. Okay. Sorry, go to the next slide. I've been talking stuff down the slides. There you go. There you go. And then meet other owners, okay? Be around other people just like this. Like, bravo for you being in this room tonight. You're around potential owners. Who owns real estate in this room already? Investments. Awesome, awesome. Like, you're around people right now who want to educate themselves and obviously grow. That's freaking incredible. So if nothing else, be around people like that. Meet other owners. What's another cool thing about owners? They probably want to sell their stuff one day. You never know. And you might be able to just, like, people always approach me and they're like, well, I know you won't send me a deal because you won't take the deal. It's like, guys, we're probably buying different things, right? Like I want to buy like 100 plus units. Okay. If I find a great deal on a duplex, I promise I'll give it to you. You know what I mean? Next, talk analyzing. Okay. This is where I stop and say, do not get lost in the sauce. Okay. There's gonna be some of this that I'm not gonna get into because it's gonna get pretty deep. But you can take it home, research it later. We'll do another class type thing. But if you're not a numbers guy, I'm not either. I hate freaking numbers unless it's money. Okay. But I love people. And that's what you got to do to be in sales, to be in real estate. Okay. So analyzing a deal. The first thing is the 1% rule. This is the back of the napkin math. Pretty awesome. You can take a deal pretty quickly and decide, do I like this or not? That's fun. You drive by a listing, you see a listing on Zillow or some other resources in a second. Well, you can decide pretty quickly if you like it or not. 1% of purchase equals the total monthly rents. That is the 1% rule. Okay. So I have an example on there. Yeah. So if I buy something for $500,000, well, those monthly rents need to be at least $5,000. Make sense? If that is true, and I can call the real estate agent, I can find it online. They probably posted their monthly rents. If it's off market, I can ask, hey, what are you renting these things for? You got 5 units times how many dollars a month, right? I can do that math. You find out a listing price. If they want 500 grand for the place, your monthly rents need to be at least 5 grand. If they are, well, now I may have a deal worth looking into. But if the guy's like, hey, I want 500 grand and my total monthly rents are $2,500, I'm like, I'm not even wasting my time. His rents are either way too low or he wants way too much money. Okay, that's just a little back in the napkin math. Operating expenses versus capital expenditures. Okay, these are different things. So your operating expenses, these are just things to understand when you're doing your analyzing. Okay, operating expenses would be things like utilities, lawn maintenance. Sorry, it's small to read. I'll read off. Utilities, lawn maintenance, property taxes, insurance. Those are 2 biggies. Okay. Maintenance and repairs, property management. That's an ongoing expense. It's a great one. Marketing, attorney fees. Here's a big expense: vacancy. When you run deals, you always expect to be 100% occupied? Probably not, right? And then one of the best things I can tell you is when you run your numbers, run them on the most conservative side. Pretend you got to pay full price. Sometimes it's good to pay full price if it's a good deal, right? But then don't just say your vacancy is going to be worth 5%. Say it's going to be worth 10%. All your numbers maybe double them. Okay. If you're like, well, that's a lot of things to look up. Yeah, it is, but that's how you run your underwriting. And if you just want a blanket number, and I said plan on the high side, right? Well, why don't you plan on 40%? 40% of your total annual income as your expense margin. Now that's pretty high. Okay, hopefully property expenses aren't going to cost 40% of your income. But guess what? If the deal makes sense at 40%, if the deal makes sense at the absolute worst case scenario, yeah, you need to pull that trigger. Make sense? Next. Oh, sorry, capital expenditures. I didn't really touch on that, but that is budgeting for your larger ticket items. Okay, that needs to be its own field, its own separate thing. If you know you got a roof that needs to be replaced in 5 years and it's a massive building, you need to start budgeting for that. That needs to fall into your numbers. You can take off an additional 5 to 10% for that alone. Okay, when you're running your numbers. Closing costs. Closing costs, something to take into consideration. Inspections, appraisal, title fees, insurance, loan fees. You can get into some pretty big deals where closing costs get up there. Okay, your attorney fees alone get up there. There's this thing called syndications we'll talk about in a second. I having a syndication attorney, he's ready for me whenever I want him. 20 grand off the top to start that syndication. Okay, we'll talk about that more in a second. Your NOI. This is what you're after right here. NOI, net operating income. Okay. So this is your gross income, mostly comes from what? Your rents. But it could also be your laundry money. It could also be maybe you take the trash out for them. Maybe it's a little extra fees, whatever it happens to be. It's all your income. Okay. It's your gross income minus those expenses we just talked about. Okay. That is your NOI. So the example we have on there, let's say it's $1 million of gross income that property makes, minus 500 in expenses. You have 500 in net operating income. Make sense? That one's pretty straightforward, right? Okay, the next one on there deserves me to write it down on the whiteboard. Why? Because if you want a loan, this one matters. DSCR, or DCR for short, debt coverage ratio, debt service coverage ratio. The whole idea of impressing your bank, impressing your lender when you walk in, have the DCR already done yourself. Okay? DSCR, DCR for short, debt service coverage ratio. This is what matters to the bank. They're going to run their own numbers, but if you walk in with some of your own projections, guys, they're going to be super impressed with you. Okay? So something else that factors in with your debt service coverage ratio is what is your total debt? What's your interest rate? Okay? Because how you find out your debt service coverage ratio is you take that NOI we just talked about divided by the total debt. Okay? So the total debt being, I'm going to take my annual payments, that includes principal and interest, and I'm going to add that up to an annual number. Okay? A lot of this, you got to start thinking annual basis, okay? Not monthly. So what is my annual income, my NOI, net operating income minus expenses, right? My NOI divided by the total debt. Okay. But what's the total loan package? What are they offering you? What interest rate are they offering you? That affects how much you pay in debt, right? So all this matters to get that total number. But the example we have on there is that $500,000 number. If you were making that annually in a year, divided by, let's pretend your total debt was 300,000 for this example. Is that what I have? Yeah. Including principal and interest, that's a 1.67 DCR. Okay. What does that number mean? Okay. So it's, remember, the 500,000 is your net operating income. Income minus expenses. That's NOI, net operating income, divided by my total debt, as in all the payments I make for the year. All the payments I make for the year, including my principal, taxes, and insurance. Okay. That'd be my total debt. They're seeing if my property can afford to pay them back, right? Because I already took care of my expenses. I divide that by my total debt. That's a 1.67 DCR, debt coverage ratio. What they're looking to find out is for every dollar I have coming in, how much can that cover? The bank likes to see a debt coverage ratio of 1.25. If you have a 1.25, they're going to be happy. All right. And this one came out to a 1.67. It's a very, very, very good debt coverage ratio. Make sense? How well can this property service the debt? Cash on cash return. Next, please. This is a biggie. This is a biggie. It's a pretty easy one as well to find out. But this is like, how much money am I making on my money? That's what every investment wants to know, right? Cash on cash return. This is the difference between the property's NOI and the debt service divided by your down payment. So, like, how much money I brought to the table after everything's already been paid. How much am I really making on the money I put down? Does that make sense? So, take a big number, for example, $10 million property. Okay. Now you paid 30% down. The bigger these properties get, the more money you have to put down, sometimes to make the deal work. Okay. So that'd be $3 million. Everybody got DSCR? So if I have $10 million property, I paid 30% down. That's $3 million down. Okay. And then if I have, remember that $500,000 number? NOI, net operating income, that's minus expenses, right? Minus my total debt, let's pretend, is 280. that is going to give me a net cash flow, right? Of how much I'm making after I paid all my expenses and all my debt for the year. Okay. So that 220 number, that 220 number divided by my down payment of 3 million is what gives me my cash on cash return. Make sense? Like I said, don't get lost in the sauce. You never heard of these little equations before. It's all right. Okay. Look them up later. Even if all you write down in a piece of paper is cash on cash return, DSCR, you can go look these back up. Okay. So that gives me a cash on cash return of 7.3%. Because a lot of investors want to know, well, how much am I making on my money? Are you happy with a 7% return? Are you happy with a 10% return? Whatever it happens to be. Okay. But that tells me based off my down payment, which was the 3 million, how much am I making against that? How much of a return am I getting on my 3 million I put away? Alexa, talking back. So here's the other cool thing that the big point I want to prove is don't raise your hands. I want to embarrass you. Who in here believes in like paying off their house, paying off their stuff, paying off their whatever? Don't. Okay. I'm gonna tell you why it doesn't make sense. I want as much debt as humanly possible. If you can give me 10 lifetimes of debt, I will take it. And you're gonna understand why right here. Okay. Because the same deal right there with no financing. Okay. I make $500,000 in OI, net operating income. Without debt, still making 500. There's nothing else to minus off. But divided by me putting 10 million down in cash versus the 3 million down for a loan, that's a 5% return. Just because I decided to use all cash in the deal. Guys, does that make sense? By you using all cash, I have so much cash against this deal that's in the deal. It is extremely hard to make a good return off that because I put all this cash in the deal, right? Versus I use a little bit of that cash to get a loan, which is called leverage. I'll get to that in a second. And now all the money I have in the deal is, let's say, $100,000 property bought. If I go pay cash 100 grand, I got 100 grand in that deal. Makes sense? Versus getting a loan 20% down, I only have to make a return against my 20,000. Using leverage, using other people's money, aka the bank, OPM, right, allows me to make a great return on my dollars invested, which is my 20% down. Follow me? Okay. Next, I'm not even gonna get out of my chair for this. You can go do your own research project if you want. This is for larger deals. This is for some extreme underwriting. This is when you get your spreadsheet out. Okay. But some other ones for those of you that I'm trying to give you a nice spread here of basics and in-depth stuff. Syndications, especially, they pay attention to these two things. IRR, the internal rate of return. Remember that thing called inflation we talked about, and your time involved in the deal, how much time you have spent in the deal. The IRR takes that into consideration. Okay, it measures the value or the time value of money in the deal over time against inflation. If that's sounding complicated, it's because it is. Okay, AAR is the average annual return. Okay, so basically your cash flow plus your profit divided by your initial investment divided by the number of years that investment is held is the idea. The equation itself looks like a freaking research paper. Okay. This is where spreadsheets and stuff come in. If you're big on numbers, you're like an analyzer side of the brain. That's awesome. I'm going to have a really good resource to tell you about here at the end. So funding deals next. So that was finding deals. Let's talk about, and we just talked about analyzing deals. Let's talk about funding deals. Okay. Like I told you, a couple of goals you need to leave here tonight with: replace your income with passive money. But first and foremost, save up your 20% down, or start like I did, save up 3.5% down. Okay. Or let's say you have access to money, you have a partner, you have a family member, whatever it happens to be. You can find a partner. Okay. Well, as a partner, there's three things you need to understand: time, effort, money. For everybody, write that out on your paper because you're probably going to partner with somebody at some point doing something. What's the perfect partnership equation? Can't tell you. That's for you and your partner to decide. They're not created equal, but the three things I would pay attention to is time, effort, and money. Who invested all the money? Who's doing all the work? Is there going to be much effort involved on either side of this equation? Does it need to be 70-30? Does it need to be 60-40? If I'm doing all the money, I probably want at least half of that deal, right? So it's three things to figure out with your partner. But if you're like, the biggest things to make a deal work is obviously finding the deal and funding the deal. So guys, if you're like, well, that's great, Jared, I know I need to work on making money. Income's number one. I agree. But you're like, you want to get started today? Be really good at finding deals. Be ultra good at finding deals. I promise you, that's the hard part. Finding the money, guys, and I'm not trying to like make this a thing or a joke or whatever, but guys, finding the money takes care of itself. I promise you. You guys have access to money if you really think about it. Okay. And finding the deal is the most important part. And there's people with money that wish they could find deals. Okay. So 20% down, like I said earlier, storing that money away in an asset. It's a beautiful thing, having future equity in the deal. Time, effort, money, worry about that with finding a partner. Hard money lenders, they are a thing. Highly, if possible, recommend not doing that route. Hard money lenders, they're not going to be as nice as far as you paying them back or not paying them back. You're going to have to leverage probably other assets, and it's going to be a stupid high interest rate. Okay. Hard money can come from a private company. It can come from a private individual. Okay. That's willing to lend you money at a very high return. And you probably should be very sure about that investment if you're taking what's called hard money loans. Okay. Like I said, it's not your traditional lender, and could require some collateral. Okay. Construction loans, and using equity. Okay. Construction loans are a beautiful thing. Who's ever heard in this? Probably on like Instagram or something. Who's ever heard buy property with no money down? That defeats the whole purpose of what I've told you to do tonight is make some freaking money. Don't worry about it. Okay. But if there was a way to buy deals with no money down, it's through construction loans. Okay. That's basically what they're trying to get you to do. And I bought a deal like this. Probably my second or third deal ever. I used a construction loan. I literally walked to the closing table and they handed me a check. Okay, that's pretty sweet. How you do that though? It's probably got to be a pretty small deal because in order to encompass your down payment, this has got to be a pretty slamming deal where it appraises for a value that can pay for that on top of your repairs. Okay, so if you have a really big deal with really big numbers, that's going to be pretty difficult. Okay, but construction loans, they have an 80% rule. Okay, 80% of that total value. This is the same. You're going to hear me talk about equity, using line of credit tonight. You're going to hear this kind of stuff. But the construction loan is 80%. For the sake of time, so if you're buying a property for $100,000, you want $50,000 in repairs. It's now worth $215,000 after you do those repairs. Okay. So $215,000 times the 80% is $172,000. So the bank's willing to give you how much that asset is worth up to 80%. Minus what you owe. So if I own a property free and clear for $215,000, the bank will give me $172,000 to do what I want with, for the right reasons, or maybe not. Maybe home equity line of credit, and I just want to go finish my basement and get a pool. Okay, it's where people get in trouble. But 172 minus the 130, which is the $80,000 I owe because I put 20% down theoretically, plus 50,000 repairs, gives me $42,000 remaining in equity. Now, the cool thing about equity, the cool thing about having a line of credit against a property up to 80% value and there's extra dollars there, I can use that equity for another deal. I bought lots of deals, especially a lot of my first deals. All you got to do is theoretically get one property ahead, and that's worth more money, and there's a little bit of extra cushion there. Well, $42,000, guys, that can be a nice down payment for something, right? This idea will come up here in a second as well. Syndications. Not going to spend a lot of time here. This is something that I have a lot of friends that do that I'm probably viewing this as my next step. The only thing is I just haven't needed it. Okay. It's the idea of pooling resources, pulling money. At this point, like I told you, I've just done deals myself, but it's a very great way to grow fast. And I would encourage you, this is not step one. This is probably a sophisticated level, but if you have great relationships, you know how to find deals and you know how to raise equity, raise money, syndications can make you very wealthy. They can grow your apartment level, your apartment count high very quickly because you're pulling resources with other people. Okay, so this is when you hear the words crowdfunding, they mean syndications, right? There's like I said, you're paying an attorney. It's usually a big fee, anywhere from 20 grand to 100 grand to start a syndication. There's different rules and government requirements, especially if I'm going to advertise that I'm taking investors. Okay. Now, what's the difference between that and me just partnering up with somebody and we just bought a deal together? Well, when it's a joint venture, I have a partner. Everybody has a responsibility in that deal. I do this for the deal. Someone else does that. Someone else does the client relationship. Someone else manages the property. Someone else does this or that. Everybody has a deal. Now, if you're doing a joint venture and all you did was take your buddy's money and you're running the whole thing, that's called a syndication. That's called you're flirting with trouble. Okay. Don't call something what it isn't. Okay. But if everybody's involved, it's a true partnership. Okay. This is a joint venture. Okay. But there are some government requirements to follow, especially if you're recruiting capital, like I said, and you're going to need an attorney to get involved. Next. Okay. Get to the tail end here. You guys doing okay? Got 20 minutes left? Drinking from a fire hose yet? Good information, I hope. So here's some investment strategies. Okay. Let's see if this is this is the last slide before I throw some resources at you. You did pretty good. So investment strategies. Anybody heard of the BRRRR method before? Very popular. It's not something I did, but I mean, a lot of people can get very, very, very wealthy doing the BRRRR strategy. Okay. So the BRRRR strategy, buy, and there's a great book on this, by the way. Another resource I forgot to mention on my paper here, but Bigger Pockets podcast, awesome podcast. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of podcast episodes on that. Okay. But one of those guys wrote a book called The BRRRR Method or BRRRR Strategy, something like that. It's buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. Okay. So let's come up with a random. And we're going to use this whole like construction loan idea, equity idea. We're going to mesh all this together with this example. Okay. So let's say first step is buy, right? Say I buy a property for 175. Okay. So to start this whole strategy, remember, what do you need? 20% down. Guys, leave here today and focus on making money. Everything else gets easy. Okay. But let's say you buy a property for 175. 175 times 20% down is 35 grand. Okay. So I'm dealing with 140,000, but I own that property. Okay. Now, what's the second letter? Well, there's a lot of R's coming, but the second step here is to rehab, to remodel that property. Okay. Let's say I put 20 grand into it. Let's say you did your own work, maybe, or something like that, and you put 20 grand into it. On paper, you're in for the deal at 160, right? But let's say, due to you putting that $20,000 in, the property is now worth, let's say you got a good deal on the front end, you put some love, sweat, and tears into it, you upgraded a little bit, maybe even a little bit of time passed, the appreciation thing we talked about. Now let's say the deal is worth 210. Everybody remember that 80% rule we just talked about? 210 times 80% is 168. Okay. Now, if I did not have the bank finance those repairs, I'm only in the deal for 140 still, right? So that's where this 80% rule comes in. So I'm going to not only buy the property, remodel it to make it better, I'm going to rent it out. So now it's paying me every month. Now I'm making money. It's also worth more to the bank because it shows an income. Then I'm going to refinance that, as in I'm going to take that property to the bank. 175, right? Is what I bought it for. There, and it's now worth 210 after my repairs. They will say to me, we'll give you up to 80% of that value, sometimes 85, which is 168 for that value, minus what we owe, which is 140, and I got an additional $28,000 hanging out. Make sense? So now what I can do through that refinance is take that 28,000 to do the repeat. And that 28,000 can be part of my down payment on the next one. Well, then what do? I just burr all over again. I buy, I remodel it. It's going to be worth more money now. I'm going to rent it out. It's going to make me money every single month. I'm going to build that. We're on number 2, right? I'm going to take it to the bank to refinance. They're going to give me more money back out. I'm going to do it again and again and again. Make sense? BRRRR strategy. Other strategies, buy and hold. Whenever I first started, I read this book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's one of the resources I want to tell you about tonight. It kind of confirmed some things in my mind, got me excited about real estate, told me where I was right, told me where I was wrong. And, you know, Robert Kiyosaki, the guy who wrote that book, with Sharon Lechter, who technically wrote that book, he got this thing in my head about you buy and hold and you never sell. I agree to a certain extent, but this thing we're talking about here in a second, 1031 kind of changed that. But buy and hold, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with being a buyer and never a seller. You will make a lot of money. You'll provide generational wealth. Is all you do is accumulate real estate the rest of your life, and you never, ever sell it. Pretty awesome strategy to me. You die, it goes to your kids. Awesome. Fix and flip. This is not real estate investing. This is real estate speculation, right? So don't hear what I'm not saying, but it is a strategy to make money. It is a strategy to get paid one time. It's awesome if you do it over and over again. House hacking is the idea of living in one side, renting out the other. Okay? You can buy a duplex, like we said. You can do this with an FHA loan, 3.5% down. 2, 3, 4 units. You can live in one unit, rent the others. They're probably paying for your mortgage, if not more, or maybe close to all of it. And now you have more income coming in to go buy more cash flow producing properties. But a lot of people get started by house hacking in some fashion. Okay. The 1031 exchange. This is my baby. This is one of the biggest loopholes in real estate. Anybody ever done a 1031 in here? I've done a few. Remember the vaseline I talked about? Somebody do $2.25 million in their calculator real quick for me. I'm 20% down. I think it's 450. Anybody got phone handy? Okay, fine, I'll do it. 2.25 million, huh? 450. Okay. Probably never forget this equation in my life. So that is how much I paid for the bathroom suites up there. Okay, $2.25 million. Sounds awesome, but I don't know about you, but I don't just have $450,000 just sitting around, right? So how Do everyday people like us, including myself, I'm no better than you guys. Okay. I've just been doing this longer. So how do we buy a $2.25 million property when we started this talk with, well, the bank makes me put 20% down. Okay. Well, 20% down is 450 G's. All right. By the way, if you can't do math with the big numbers, don't do math with the small numbers, right? You need to be able to do math with the big numbers in order to want to buy the small numbers. So don't let these big numbers scare you. That was my down payment. How in the world did I come up with that money? Through a 1031 exchange. This is why I love the game of Monopoly so much, because it is 1000% real. 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. That's a philosophy behind a 1031 exchange. Okay. They're a 1031 exchange. So everybody heard the question of how I got started, right? I bought an FHA house. Their house using FHA loan. Okay. Beautiful house, 1721 Dunklin. I'll never forget. Little 3-bedroom house, probably 900 square feet on the main level. And bought that property, rented it out myself, learned a lot. Okay. Well, then I got freaking hungry. I was like, well, that was awesome, but screw Dunklin. I want another one. So I wanted to buy another deal. And then I wanted to buy another deal. What did I do? Some of those strategies we talked about. I just bought the best locations I could. I learned a lot about real estate. So before I knew, I had 5 or 6 houses, and I was like, this is stupid. I'm not managing this anymore. Hired my first property manager. Hired my next property manager. Hired my next property manager. Right? You live and you learn. I made my own lease. Probably shouldn't have. I edited my own lease, I should say, and learned a lot. But what did I do? I accumulated deals over time. I had 5 or 6 houses that I bought starting out. I bought a couple of duplexes, bought a triplex, bought a couple, HUD houses. Don't buy HUD houses. Why do I say that? Not because it's not good money. It potentially is. But when you buy HUD houses and it's potentially lower income housing, who are you going to sell those to? Another investor. That's it. Guess what another investor wants? A deal. Make sense? That's the difficulty there. Okay. There's nothing wrong with it. There's a lot of people make a lot of money with HUD houses. That's fine. But who are you going to sell it to? I've ran into that problem too. So what did I do? I took 10 of my properties, not all of them. Okay. But I took 10 of my properties. Actually, you guys want to hear a story? Who told me this idea? The one and only Grant Cardone you guys heard us talk about. So Grant Cardone, crazy billionaire. Yes, a little vulgar, a little out there at times. But I've been to all of his tennis growth cons. I had the opportunity to sit down with him one-on-one. We worked a lot with his company. Hey guys, you kind of bothering me in the back. Hey, please. So whenever I went and met with Grant, we sat across the table from each other for an hour and 15 minutes. And all he did was run through my properties. And I brought this little like laminated notebook trying to look, all special and everything. Like I got to be prepared for Grant Cardone, right? Some of you heard me tell this story. So then literally for like 45 of the minutes, he went through each of my properties. He's like 29 North Henderson. How much equity do you have in that property? I was like, well, I bought it for this. I probably could sell it for that. I think I have like 20 grand in that property. How about this one? How about this one? How much do you have in this property? Probably like, I just bought that probably like 20 grand, my down payment, right? How about this one? I probably got like 50 in that one. And he went down the list and added up all my equity. And he's like, you know what you need to do? I was like, what, Grant? He's like, you need to take all of this, go sell it to some chiropractor as a package, and then take all that money and buy something else. That's a 1031 exchange. Okay, the fun part of this story, some of you know this with one of my goals I just accomplished. The end of this story, then I'll get back to the 1031. At the end of my packet, my binder I had for Grant, I had the largest property I was under contract with at the time, I didn't even own it, was a 70-unit apartment building, 4 North Penwood. And I went ahead and put that on my binder just because I wanted to impress Grant. And I put it in italics and I was like, 4 North Penwood, 7 units under contract. Felt so good about myself. So Grant gets to the bottom of my list and he's going through all my different properties. He said, what's this? I was like, oh, that's just, 7 unit under contract with right now. And I kid you not, if you know Grant, he says it with a smile and love. Okay. So sorry for the language, but he looks at me and he has that little Grant Cardone grin. He says, you need to stop buying this pussy shit. And he says, the next time you buy something, you need to add a zero to it. So for 5 years, that was my goal. For several of those years, literally every day I wrote down the goal. I purchased a 70 plus unit complex in whatever the year it was, 2024. Okay, which I accomplished in February this year when I bought the Sunny Hill building on West End. It's exactly 70 units. So I got to cross that goal off, which is pretty cool. But the 1031 exchange, what I did was I took 10 of those properties that I owned at the time in 2020, and I found one buyer, a friend of mine who was looking to invest down here. I packaged it all up, came up with a price. We negotiated a little bit, and I had one buyer for all 10 of those properties. Crazy enough, can't remember what I sold that for. It's 10 properties. Crazy enough, those 10 properties that I sold to them, and I had this deal under contract with Ashland Suites, right, for 2.25 million. The profit that I made from selling all those properties, from the appreciation, from them growing over time, not counting my cash flow that I made for however many years for all those properties, but the profit plus, remember all those 20% downs that I had to buy for all 10 of those properties? I took that money away in 10 properties for however long. Okay. So the profit that I made from all those properties and all my little 20% that added back up, kid you not, was a little over $450,000. So I traded 10 these good properties, good locations, right? Some good, some bad, but 10 properties for one of the best locations in town. I walked into that closing, signed papers to sell 10 of those properties with $0 in my hand. I did not bring a check to that closing due to the 1031 exchange. So I took a little over $450,000 and I put all that money down on the Bachelor Suites as my down payment. And actually pay my loan down an additional $11,000. So you actually cannot, if you're doing a 1031 exchange, divvy up some of that money to use for something else. 100% of that money must go to the next investment. The like-kind exchange. Okay, real estate to real estate. The other thing, basically the most important thing you're doing, guys, if I had to write a check, if I sold all 10 of those properties, you're like, I'm tired of real estate. This sucks. It's a lot of work. I got tenants, I got termites, I got toilet problems. And I was like, I just want out. I sold all 10 of those properties and I made $450,000. That 40% check I wrote to Uncle Sandy hurts. Called capital gains. When you sell something, you got to pay capital gains. Okay? But a 1031 exchange does not get rid of your taxes. It defers your taxes to a later date. Well, what if I just never sell my real estate? Well, then I'll die one day and I'll never pay those taxes. Seems like a great strategy to me. So all I did, guys, is I played the game of Monopoly. 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel, and I put 450 grand down to buy a better, larger asset, one location, and I brought $0 to that closing. If that's not a loophole, I don't know what else is. And the best part, every single one of you can do that. Every single one of you can accumulate over time 10 properties, yes? And then one day, convince yourself it's a great idea to sell them. You don't get emotionally attached. And you can buy up. One day, I'll probably sell the Bachelor Suites, maybe to one of you in this room, right? How cool would that be? Because you're looking for your next deal, and 24 units is an awesome number to you. And I want to sell that to take my $1 million and put it against a $5 million property. Possible, right? Voice is starting to go. So the last thing on there is securing a line of credit. That's a beautiful thing down the road as well. I owned a farm in Millersville, free and clear. Is it awesome to say you own something free and clear? Sure. What did I tell you earlier? Throw some debt on it. Guys, you're silly not to use debt. It's a $1 million property that is paid off. And I could just sit there and enjoy it and own it free and clear and feel good about myself, or I could use it for my needs. So what did I do? I went and threw a big line of credit against that property. Now I use that big line of credit to buy my flips, to pay for repairs, to pay for this or that when I need it. So that's another thing is the bigger this gets, the better it gets, guys. The Vacheling Suites. Keep talking about that, but it's a great property. It's not only one location, it's better tenants. The tenants there are paying more money than the 10 other ones I had all over the place. And I got one roof to deal with instead of 10. Make sense? Rod Khleif is another guy I'm about to talk about as a resource in a second. He lost $50 million in 2008 when the crash happened. Why? Because he owned 800 homes, 800 houses that he had to, that were all over the place. And when, I don't know about you guys, I'm not very handy. I don't know if like hammers take batteries or whatever. I don't really get it. But who's ever been to Home Depot or Lowe's or Menards one time? No, you always got to go back, right? So when you have 800 houses and there's a repair needed and you're going back and forth, it's impossible to keep up with. He lost it all in 2008. Now he owns a crap ton of apartments and he will not lose them no matter what. The people who survived 2008 owned apartments. Okay? For all those reasons I just said. So securing a line of credit. Look at that, 730. Next slide, please. But securing a line of credit, maybe that's down the road for you. That's awesome. It's an 80% value rule still. Okay. So like if I own something for $1 million, right? And I want to use a line of credit and it's owned free and clear, they might give me up to $800,000 to use as a line of credit for that property. Make sense? That 80% rule. So you can also do that to maybe even remodel property. I own 235 North Florida up here is a 6-unit across from a 12-unit apartment I own. And I was like, I know I probably need to put some money in that. It probably needs a little love. A few years back, I was like, I really don't want to drop 60K into that of my own money. I'd owned it for like 8 years already. It's definitely worth more. So what did I do? I went and put more debt against that property. It definitely could afford it. I was going to raise the rents. It was going to pay for the money I put into it. So I used the 80% rule. Like, what's this property worth? 450? Well, shoot, I bought this thing for 200 something. There's definitely enough equity there to cover the 60,000. I'm going to raise the rents. It's going to cover my new payment. So guys, this is not fair. These are the loopholes of real estate that, like, I went and updated all 6 units for 60 grand and I put not a dime into it. Made the property better. It's going to appreciate over time. It's going to pay my mortgage still. My tenants are. So some resources for you guys. I wish I had copies. I would give them to you next time. I'll try to do that. Rich Dad Poor Dad. Y'all read this book. Y'all read it 10,000 times. It just makes so much sense. This is Robert Kiyosaki. I'll tell you about. Sharon Lecter wrote his story. He talks about his rich dad and his poor dad. His poor dad is his actual dad. Okay, his poor dad was your typical good man. Doesn't mean they're bad people, but his college professor. He lived that middle class way I was telling you about earlier, and that's how he did life. His rich dad was the one who put all his money into real estate. You couldn't tell he was rich for a long time, but guess what? He ended up being rich. And it's a great story. Makes a lot of sense. Grant Cardone, this crazy guy I've been telling you about. Read all of his books in general, but this one, it's a pretty easy read. Okay, I really like it because it's easy read. It's how to create wealth investing in real estate. It's a very short read. Very easy. I've read it several times. And then if you want something a little bit more dense, but it's a great property, this guy named Rod Khleif, he's the guy who lost all this money back in 2008, $50 million, a lot of money to lose. He talks a lot about multifamily investing. How to create lifetime cash flow, which is the name of this podcast, by the way. How to create lifetime cash flow through multifamily properties. Great podcast. A little bit more dense, covers a lot of this stuff a lot better than I did. So highly recommend that as well. If you're one of those analyzer types, like we were saying earlier, okay, and you want to really dig into numbers, you want to learn how to analyze, you like that kind of stuff, that's up your alley. Michael Blank, spelled blank, Michael Blank, Blank, has the absolute best underwriting program out there. Every serious syndicator that I know uses his. But you don't have to raise money to, and syndicate to use it. You just want to learn more about how to underwrite your deals. how to analyze your deals, make sense of a deal, highly recommend getting his program. Okay. Next slide, last slide. I told you at the beginning, not a joke. I truly think the best way to get started in this potentially is you getting your real estate license. You want to learn a lot. You want to be around deals. You want to be around me and our team. Raise your hand if you're with Ritter Real Estate here tonight. There's a lot of people in this room that just wanted to learn. They just wanted to help you. They just want to be a part of this event. Okay.
Be the agent.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. If you're just like, well, that's great. I just want to invest. Meet my people, please, and let them help you with investments and be that resource we talked about earlier. But if not, you're like, you know what? That's literally what I did. Like I told you, my secret to success is no. It's very clear. Okay. I tried to get really, really good at my craft, selling real estate, helping buyers and sellers. And I took all that money and put it to a passive vehicle, real estate. It's all I've done. So we have an event that is more specific. Some of you have been there before, talking about how to get your license, what our company offers, that kind of thing. It's a great way to make money. It's a great way to get involved. It's a great way to find deals. So that is December 12th. It's a Thursday night, just like this. We'll move the big table back down and we'll have a nice event talking about all that kind of stuff again. And of course, we cover the financial seniority ranking because I can't get away from it. So, questions? I'll take questions. The last thing I ask of you, go home and write your goals down. Can you give me a drink? You're eliminated, whichever, I don't care. But go write your goals down, guys. Today is 1,502 or 1,503 days I've been writing my goals down every single day without missing. Okay. So that's a good way to stay in front of your goals if you're willing to write them down. So you got to figure some of those goals out. Questions? Can I throw some koozies at you guys too? Okay, I won't throw them. Start taking and passing them. Start passing around. You guys can take some. Of course. What other question you guys have?
You wish you would have made the jump to multifamily sooner?
Absolutely, positively. Yeah, of course. You football guys, you go ahead. I guess anybody want a leftover football from our Be Right conference when I had Marshall Falk there? There we go. I gotta get rid of you somehow. Use it in. And then guys, I got Be Bright t-shirts as well. These are leftover from events. I'm not charging anything, but if you'd like a shirt, please take a shirt as well. You got white and black Be Bright shirts. You can come find whatever you want when you leave. But so question was, I wish I would have got started in multifamily. Yeah.
Single family deals are a little bit more readily found, right? A little
Yes.
easier to find. So it's a good place to start. But once, I mean, you think once you get into single family rentals, you should start looking for the big deal?
Yes. And you know what, like that's if it stops you from getting started, I would say get started. Because that's exactly what I did, right?
Yeah.
And you see it like worked out for me because I eventually sold all those properties to buy the big ones. But yeah, if you guys have somewhere to be, please don't feel like you need to say. But if you want some Q&A time, I'm more than willing to say. But I do appreciate everybody's time. Hopefully you learned something. Please, there's a review thing or whatever. Yeah, can we pass those out real quick? Thank you. You guys got pins still, right? Let me know how this goes. This is the first one we did. What you liked, what you didn't like, okay? I would really, really, really appreciate if you do that for me, okay? But if you know you're looking at a deal and it's a residential home, and you're like, dang, this is amazing location, whatever.
Yeah.
I would not tell you not to buy it. But the faster you can get to more units, the better. It makes everything so much easier. You hear Grant say, don't buy anything less than 24 units, 32 is what he typically says. And that's just because the deals are they work so much easier. You can manipulate them, like I said. You can raise rents $10 and all of a sudden they've made a lot more money that year. You know, so the tenants usually get better with the larger deals. Yes.
How do you balance number of units with the 1031 Because you have to have some sort of ratio or idea in your mind before you do convert it, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. And I've done a few 1031 exchanges. Um, it's always best if you kind of know what you're buying, right? And I know that's not the perfect world. You can do what's called a reverse 1031 exchange where you sell first, buy later. There's no attorney in this general area that will do that. I found an attorney in Columbia that would and have that conversation. They don't like to. It's not easy. It's not fun. It's expensive. But the best 1031s I've like the Vaseline. I was like, well, shoot, if I'm going to buy that, I got to sell stuff. I don't have another choice, right? But they were willing to work with me on that and got the deal on their contract. While I kind of had some feelers out there as far as somebody who had purchased my package of 10 houses, 10 properties. So yes, that I might have kept a couple of those if I didn't need that much money for a potential down payment, right? So it all kind of goes into your personal situation for what you need. Good question. Any other questions?
Do you see any value in actually purchasing like vacant lots?
Sure. I mean, yes and no. It depends on your strategy. The one thing I don't like about vacant lots is I know they're not making any more land and that kind of stuff. I get that, like price per acre is going to go a long way, but if it's just a vacant lot, it really depends on what you're doing with it. Like if you're buying it to build on, remember that speculation. Treat that like a flip, a way to make money in order for you to take a profit and put it into an investment. Absolutely. But it's a very tough strategy for like a buy and hold idea. Why? Because unless you can like rent it out for farming, crops, something like that, you're not making any cash flow. And that's the best thing about rental properties. Like there's that 70 unit apartment building. Once it's full, I got 70 people paying me every single month. The vacant land, maybe the buy and hold strategy, but it's a longer investment, right? You're buying and holding.
You ever run into any problems with recapture on depreciation?
No.
It's always 1031 and
Yeah,
buying up and
exactly.
you haven't had a problem with it at all.
Nope. And you can also do smaller 1031s. So I bought a house on 1311 North Henderson. It was actually a foreclosure many years back. And I knew it was a great location, had some pretty basic things it needed. I owned that for a while. Then I kind of had the conversation with myself as far as like the money I'm making off this monthly versus the amount of equity I had sitting there. Yeah, I could have taken that equity and done like a line of credit, like I said, and use it somewhere else. But I decided to experiment and sold that, did a 1031 to buy a duplex in St. Louis. It was a great duplex, owned it for several years, and it appreciated in value by quite a lot. Had a profit of $125,000 just from the appreciation alone. So I did another 1031 exchange and bought 2 properties down here. Like a year and a half ago. Any other questions? Any favorites that you heard tonight that was like, okay, that was a good nugget or a good eye opener? Just for some feedback outside the paper.
Push out.
It's all right. Yeah.
I would be, I don't know if you could do this, but I'd kind of like to see if maybe you could evaluate like a deal that's currently on the market and say, hey, this is what would be good about it.
Yeah, I mean, we could. It's just, I mean, to be honest with you, we'd probably have to look for a pretty decent amount to find something that's currently on the market. I mean, we can pull some up if you want, but probably for the sake of time, won't be able to do that right this second, but I think that'd be a good follow-up class. But really, like, just to talk out loud about it as far as what you'd be doing is you're trying to find something, because really all it depends on is what you can rent it out for, right? Who cares what you pay for? You don't have to pay $200,000 for this, that, pay 150. So taking that times 20%, now you have your down payment, right? So if it's, then you can put that into an amortization schedule to figure out what your monthly payment's going to be. So you can Google amortization schedules online on Google and find one pretty easy. You enter in what the loan amount's going to be. You enter in what your projected interest rate's going to be, and you find out your monthly payment. Well, then it's pretty simple. As like, okay, this random 4-bedroom, 3-bath house on the market, what's my payment going to be on that? And then what can I rent it for? You're like, oh, shoot, well, that only nets me like $150 a month. That's really, really tight. One toilet leaking ruins 4 months of cash flow. You know what I mean? So you can do it with any property. The biggest thing is just going to be location, like we said. How much can I rent it for at that location, and what price do I have to buy it for? Because that's going to factor in everything else. Does that make sense? Just as far as talking through it? Yeah, yeah.
So how easy is it to rent?
Very. So, like I said earlier, the fact that literally half of this community is rentals, or people that live in these properties are using them as rentals, is crazy to me. It's crazy. Okay. We at the Vashling Suites up here, those are mostly small studios. Some 2 bedrooms, some 1 bedrooms, but mostly are small studios. We always have a waiting list. Always, always, always. Okay. So maybe that means you need to bump up the rent a little bit. Maybe it means you just got a really good location, whatever that sweet spot is, right? Um, Whenever I first started buying houses around the college campus, I was like, oh, sweet, college rentals. That's going to be my thing. I know I'll be able to charge per bedroom, whatever. I was shocked how many families I ended up renting to instead. And I was like, well, that's awesome. That probably won't destroy the house. And there was a lot of demand. So I don't know if you have any more specifics on that, but I would say I would not worry about can I rent it out or can I not. It all comes down to that right price, right? What you can rent it for, just like what you can sell something for. Anybody else? Well, hey, I really appreciate your time.